and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for our third episode of the Heartistry Video Series. Before we begin, we would like to inform you that portions of this episode do not include subtitles. We encourage you to turn this feature on in YouTube directly when they are not included in a particular section. My name is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and I am the founder and artistic director of Noorani Dance. My pronouns are she, her, and I am wearing a bright green top with gold overlay. I have long black hair and I'm wearing long gold earrings, and I'm currently seated in my home dance studio. Noorani Dance was started and continues to exist on the ancestral lands of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. We pay respects to their elders, past, present, and future. And we ask you to please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today, and join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. The Heartistry Video Series is a virtual visual platform where we return to videos of previous performances and at times create anew. As we seek to reimagine our work as artists to act as a catalyst for collaboration, creativity, and conversation with others that are bringing a deep sense of passion, compassion, and commitment to their artistic practice. Tonight's episode of the Heartistry Video Series is part 2 of Social Change through heARTivism. The first of these streamed a couple months back, and we will be sharing a recap of it during this episode. Before we tell you more about what we have for you in store tonight, we want to encourage you and welcome you to participate in the chat as often as you like throughout our time together. We love seeing your comments and questions, and many of our featured collaborators of this episode are also joining us today in the chat and might be able to respond to your thoughts and questions. Tonight, we explore the activist that lies within many artists, hence our theme of heARTivism. Like this word, which brings heart, art, and activism together, we have brought a powerful group of women of color artists from across the US as we honor and celebrate the work that they do to advocate for equality and justice, addressing various issues through their artistic voice and movement. In our previous episode, we were in conversation with the 5 dance artists of this group. Through a conversation with each of them, we took a deeper look at how they engage in their art and activism through glimpses into their performances, teaching, and choreography, and how they examine, question, resist, and disrupt various systems of oppression. And today, we remind you of the amazingness of each of these dance artists through a short recap of excerpts from that episode. We do strongly encourage you to watch that episode in its entirety by visiting nooranidance.com to get the link. We are also welcoming 2 more phenomenal women to the conversation tonight, Valarie Kaur and Annette Philip, of which I will be in conversation with each of them so you can learn more about their powerful brilliance. And then all 8 of us will come together to reflect on what this collaboration has meant to us and what we hope all of you will take away from it, and so much more. This portion of our time will be moderated by another fantastic heARTivist, Bhumi Patel. And last, but definitely not least, we will close out our time with you tonight with the premiere of a new collaborative piece titled Transition, based on the profound words written and performed by Valarie Kaur from her book, See No Stranger, with the music composed by Annette Philip and choreographed and performed by all of the dance artists. To begin, we share a recap of the last episode where we highlighted the work of each of the dance artists, Alicia Nascimento, Athena Nair, Aysha Upchurch, Brinda Guha Nadhi Thekkek. Be ready to be inspired and learn from each of the artists and collaborators. And we thank you again for joining us for this very special episode, Social Change through Heartivism.
What I was so compelled by is when we looked at the archive stories, that they were so relevant to right now, yeah. and wanting them to be on stage for people to see is to make that story louder and clearer for our community members, for our kids to know that they exist. And the way we address it, like I said, is like through how we express ourselves is, of course, through our art. So, I mean, that's really how Unfiltered came about. And we really asked, like, what does it mean to be unfiltered about this issue? You know, and when do we put the blame on ourselves, and when do we put the blame on, you know, the victim, or, you know, whatever it is, and why is that always happening? Even
not my fault, 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 not my fault.
We still have this continued disregard of Black bodies. As an artist, it's like a visceral response. It's a movement response. And at first I was just exploring what that looked like. And then I was like, I'm going to make a deliberate piece that is going to be my body on stage for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I worked with Alex Patrick with the Black Theater Troupe here in Phoenix. And he's a friend as well. So we have multiple conversations of like, what does this look like? How does this feel? And we got into a studio and I ended up creating this piece, and it's just in response to that.
We certainly don't need martyrs, but we need examples, and you are that.
There's ways that we can have these difficult conversations that respect where they are and also respect where we are, so that we can like cross these paths.
You know, you mentioned what the story was maybe intended to be. And quite honestly, it was probably intended to be like, stay in your lane. Like, this is what happens when, you know, people of lower caste are like, do this. Like, this is what you deserve. You know, that's probably was the intention. And so I think for me, what I love about the way that, you know, I've learned Kathak from you specifically, Farah Didi, is that, you know, we can reclaim these stories and tell them from a new perspective. And that's what we did. Dona eventually asks him to give his guru dakshina, which is the gift given from a guru, or given to a guru from their shishya. And usually it's a very special gift. And what Drona asks is for Ekalavya to chop off his thumb so that he can't shoot anymore. And the goal there is that he's the best archer in, you know, in the kingdom, but the princes should be. And so if he cuts his thumb off, he won't be able to practice archery anymore. Ekalavya does this, and I think it's a really powerful story about the sacrifices that people are almost forced to make in order to pursue their passion. The experience of the mother as to what it's like to care for someone and to do everything for that person, and knowing the sacrifices that they might have to go through and the harms that they will face, and still, what is it like to push them to be their best? And how do you balance, how does a mother, how does a caregiver balance this knowledge of what the world is like and what the world might beat your kid down into, and also encourage their kid to follow their dreams?
I think for me, some kind of way that spoke to me even more, and with the unfortunate coincidence of the surge and the reckoning or recognizing of racial of racism and of police brutality against Black bodies in the state. So all of that's converging. Ahmaud Arbery's killed, Breonna Taylor's killed, George Floyd is killed, and so many others. And I'm struggling, and this person, this artist finding me. And so I just, because I was nerding out listening to interviews, I just recorded one of the interviews she had.
Giving out to them that Blackness, that Black power, that Black pushing them to identify with Black culture. I think that's what you're asking. I have no choice over it. In the first place, to me, we are the most beautiful creatures in the whole world, Black people.
And for me, like, I really needed to remind myself that Black people aren't brilliant just because we overcome, but we're brilliant because. And even though they literally will try to take our bodies and take everything that we produce and erase it, we are brilliant. We are brilliant even when we are struggling psychologically behind closed doors.
I say all that to say is that the organic energy that kind of births the work of Souls of Duende is always like that. It's always this one idea that turns into this other idea because music is being made. And what a better way to speak to disruption and togetherness than allowing energy to flow like that, you know? And really being the cornerstone of social justice for me is relationality and relationships with people. You can go ahead and change the world, but if you don't change your circle, and if you don't work with your circle, it's really, really hard to talk to the rest of the world because you're not coming from a place and a perspective of community, right?
Disruption is togetherness. I mean, that's the irony, right? I mean, isn't that what activism is? It's the coming together. It doesn't happen, with one single person, one single movement. It's this collective energy. And ironically, it is that collective energy that disrupts. So you need both of those things. And
also inside change and outside change has to kind of happen in parallel. I think people think we'll come together, we'll have a common purpose, and we'll go change the law. And I think it's actually about coming together, sorting out our stuff, and then prioritizing the things we all believe in and then advocating for it while still working through our stuff. I think that's why I think relationality has so much to do with it.
The best and easiest way to start is to bring in the amazing artists that you just heard from.
In 10 years, what I am pulling out my rose-colored glasses about that we will pivot the conversation in the very strangest and most uncomfortably divine way. I do believe that everybody understands better what the arts are. And what they are is what they have always been, embedded in the human experience. My advocacy is committed to helping people realize that the arts are not something frivolous. They are not something ancillary. They are extremely essential to the human experience, and that there is a reason why grandpas literally all over the world were getting savage, because we needed them chakras needed to move. We needed that connection, call it whatever medium or whatever, but I'm hoping that in 10 years, and I am working, not just hoping that in 10 years, there's no more conversation that minimalizes the arts into some Western canon only experience reserved for the select few that can always be put on the chopping block. That is where we have to elevate from. And that is a call not to just the patrons of places, but for my fellow artists who've not respected the craft of what we do, to stand up and advocate for your pay, to advocate for your health care, to advocate for your well-being, to say that what I do is essential, even if the CDC didn't say we were.
Thank you.
Amen.
Yeah.
No, I'm just taking it all in. This is such it's really emotional. So that's why I haven't been muted. But I think it's our responsibility as artists. What I realized, like, yes, we create and we sort of process these horrible things through our bodies, you know? And one thing I realized, it's not just us alone, right? I mean, as an artist, especially as an Indian dancer, I mean, we work alone, you know, like, yeah, we have collaborators, but the process of reading and writing and prompting, and I think this is similar across many different art forms, that you're really connecting to something deep within yourself and putting that in your body. And then somehow you have to extend that to your dancers and musicians and collaborators, and they have to be with you. And it's not just a project. It's not just a project that I got funding for, you know, and we have to sort of do the dance in front of funders to like make them give us money. But really it's not about the
funders who don't know what they're watching,
right?
And to decide if we get the money or not.
Exactly. That's what I mean, all the work that you all have been doing and showing, it really, it's truth. You know, it's not just dance. It's not even just art, even though those are beautiful things. It's truth, and it needs to be heard and seen, and it needs to be communicated through everyone we work with. And that community is important too. You know, and it's not just the product or like, I don't know. That's what I'm just thinking. I mean, just seeing the work, it's so obvious, right? When you see every single video that I've seen of every single one of you, it's like, that's truth.
I'm going to say 3 words. 3 words that are resonating most strongly with you tonight. I'm not going to direct any beyond that. It doesn't even have to be about tonight. It can be, but just in this particular moment, what are you feeling?
Feeling community, disrupt, and liberate.
I feel like seen, felt, and inspired.
All right. I'm going to say accountability. I'm going to say clarity. I'm going to say love.
My words are dissent, threshold, and truth.
Affirmed. Powerful and seen.
Words that are really ringing true to me are actually, they're in Urdu, which is the language of Pakistan, and I'll give a loose translation, but I guess these are the 3 words. And some of you know this is a name of a show because I think it so defines the art form that I am so blessed to be a part of. I think it defines femininity. I think it defines so much. And so I'll say it in Urdu first, nazakat or takat, which means, literally translated means delicacy and strength or power. Loosely translated, I say a delicate power. And I believe that is where we are. There's a fragility, there's a delicacy, there's a grace, there's a strength, and there's a fire, and there's a power. And I'm just so, so deeply grateful to be in this fire. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who joined us tonight. Yeah, literally, you are looking at some just amazing heARTivists. And we're not done. Episode 3, you guys. Well, you can see, even in these very brief excerpts of each of the dance artists, the enriching conversation that we all had together towards the end of that episode, you can see why I was so compelled to bring all of us together. Again, please do watch that episode in its entirety by going to nooranidance.com and retrieving the link there. I just want to say that I'm really seeing and feeling all the love from all of you in the comments, and thank you. I'm so happy to see so many of the collaborators also joining us tonight. So that really just widens my smile that much more. And I also just really need to take a moment. You know, I'm seeing so many statements of gratitude to me directly, and I do appreciate that. But I have to acknowledge that this is not a solo effort. The staff of Noorani Dance is really the dream team, the community that I am so blessed to be a part of and do this very meaningful work alongside each and every day. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge Gina, Lakshmi, Bhumi, Pratiksha, Shubra, Kai, and Jasmine for all that they do to bring programming like this to all of you. And now we introduce you first to Annette Philip. And then following that will be my conversation with Valarie Kaur. Both are incredible individuals doing invaluable and meaningful work on so many levels and in so many ways. Enjoy. Annette Philip. Annette is a musician, educator, and arts entrepreneur, a seasoned recording and touring artist, composer, pianist, and voiceover actor. She is an Emmy-nominated TV personality and a bona fide sari connoisseur. At Boston's Berklee College of Music, Annette is the founder and artistic director of the Berklee Indian Ensemble, a viral phenomenon with close to 200 million views to date. Besides performances with several Grammy-winning legends, including A.R. Rahman, Bill Whalen, Nona Hendrix, and Zakir Hussain, Annette has spent over a decade touring the globe with internationally acclaimed vocal quartet, Women of the World, disruptors in the a cappella world, singing in 37 languages and counting. In all that Annette does, including Keeping It Light, her powerful reflection series, Annette's message of self-love, resilience, and kindness are the foundation. Welcome, Annette. It is such a joy. I can't even tell you how thrilled I am to see you and to have you be part of this collaborative project.
Oh, it's just such a pleasure for me, Farah. I'm so grateful to be part of your world in this endeavor together.
Yes. And well, I want to give a little context to how this even came to be, which I think is so relevant, right? I reached out to you just having been a fan from afar. I reached out to you to actually be on the Heartistry talk show, the podcast. And through a beautiful conversation, I just had such a calling from my heart to work with you and to engage with you beyond that conversation that we had just had. And this project was already in its initial sort of creative conceptual phase, if you will. And having somebody create the music was exactly the next step. And my paths crossed with you. And in that moment, if you may remember, I said, Annette, would you be interested in doing this? And I remember your response, which if people didn't get it, you said yes. But more than that, do you remember what you said? Because when I told you we were going to be working with Valarie and her words, please, can you share?
Well, I really believe there's a divine alignment and a divine timing for everything. And a few days before our conversation had happened, I woke up with this dream. I had a vision that I'm doing something with spoken word. And I saw three people and it wasn't completely clear, but I remember waking up and saying, spoken word, that's coming. And it still gives me chills to think about that. And I remember that, the conversation that you and I had, it was just such a beautiful flow and it felt so familiar and it felt very home, like home. And so when you asked that, it was just, not just my words, but I felt like my spirit was already dancing and saying, yes, let's do it. This was the one, this was what was meant to be. So what a joyous occasion when things really merge and align. So thank you.
Well, and I definitely want to get more into, the creation of the music, because as those who are joining us tonight are about to hear and see through the work of the dancers, the words of Valarie, your music, I mean, all of it, everyone, what a gift. But we'll get there. I would love to just actually chat a little bit about sort of the theme of this episode. Social change through heARTivism. I guess, what does it mean to you? And do you feel that that's a conscious place in your life and your work?
When I think of music and, the role of music, I always see myself as a storyteller. And for me, activism with music comes along in the process and the responsibility and the opportunity to tell stories, and especially to tell untold stories, or to bring stories that may already be in the public sphere to light, perhaps in a different perspective. So for me, that's really how I look at activism in music. And
And we see that so evident in your work, again, sometimes with quite literal messaging, and sometimes just in the representation, frankly. Your all-female ensemble, the power of seeing the four of you, the power and beauty that comes out of those collective voices, the songs that you choose to create and or sing that may have been created by others. I mean, that's representation on many levels, not to mention the work you do with these up and coming artists, if you will, through the Berkeley Indian Ensemble. I mean, all of that, again, from my observation, feeds into this very theme. Let's talk about this process. So, again, everything that came together through this piece I was inspired by the work of Valarie Kaur. She's somebody I've known for many years, but have gotten to know her even better, especially through her work, her writing, her memoir, See No Stranger. And so taking excerpts of that and working with her to, ask her to record a slightly edited version of what we read in the book or what she wrote in the book, and then passing that on to you. And I remember some of our first sort of creative sessions, right? It was putting mood to these passages that then helped you to think about, okay, I would approach it this way. I would approach it this way. How did that process continue to unfold for you?
Listening to Valarie and listening to how she put her sentiment across, and listening also to the spaces between her breath, between phrases, where her voice would trail off at certain times, where I would feel a surge of energy from her, and that really, there's a cadence to that I wanted to honor as best as I could. And I knew Valarie's work from having watched her documentary, Divided We Fall. It's actually a documentary that I brought into the classroom with the Berkeley Indian Ensemble before. Yeah. And that's how I first got to know Valarie. And then I saw her beautiful talk, where she talks about, is this the darkness of the womb or
as
the
she
tomb?
refers to it, yes, her watch night speech.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I remember showing that to the Indian Ensemble and saying and feeling, way back, this is about 5 years ago, that wow, this is, I so resonate with this message. And so for me, it was like coming back to a message that I resonated with and that I had held on to, but in such a miraculous way. We barely knew each other when this began, but perhaps we all know each other somehow. There's a thread. You feel like there's something
Kismet is a
connecting us.
very powerful force, if you ask me.
I agree. So I was coming to her voice, being able to just listen to this in a very centered way, feeling that, well, what an honor. And then secondly, how may I color this? And I really felt that her voice is the first instrument, in the piece. And so I was thinking of rhythms. I was thinking also of just very simplistic piano and also just ambient sounds. And a lot of the piece came through in one take. It just started, and I sometimes when I compose, I will just allow myself to free flow. And most of the track, the piano parts were a one set free flow, improvisation, kind of just simply responding to Valarie, having heard her many times and having kind of understood her cadence.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, And it's what's so amazing is that at the time that you did the music, you didn't have the visual of the dancers.
I did not.
And so that's what I'm so excited for you to see that tonight for the first time.
I know.
And I think that that's what's going to be so lovely for all of us, to see even those of us who danced in it, seeing each other, seeing you and Valarie, hearing everything. Anyway, the coming together, I think it speaks volumes. And I believe, and you shared this with me as you were in the process of creation too. This is what I believe it means to be a heARTivist, because we're doing this work because we believe in, and this project, let's use this rightly so as an example. We believe that there's a message in this project, and through the contribution of all of us to amplify that message, the energy and intention that was put in, and yet what we put in and what we receive from it. So you, as well as many of the dancers, as well as Valarie, when she heard your score, really came at this both with something to give, but also being so deeply moved. And I remember specifically you were going through some hard times, and the process of this was actually, please put it in your words, but my interpretation was quite healing for you.
Yeah, deeply cathartic. I remember that, I had laid down some parts of the piece, and then I remember writing to you saying, I feel like I've hit a wall because, every single time that I go on my phone to read my texts or my emails or even social media, people that I know and care about very deeply have passed on, or their mothers or fathers have passed on, and all due to this new wave of COVID that hit India right at that point when, our deadline for the music was coming through. And I wrote to you saying, I don't know. I feel very stuck. I feel very, kind of bogged down by this. And after I texted you, I took a walk around the Charles River in Boston, and I was just howling. I was just weeping. And I sometimes when I'm in the worst place, I go back and I listen to the project, and that's actually the place where I thought, actually, I would love to have, 2 or 3 instances of violin. And it just felt right sitting at the lake at Charles River, on the side of Charles River. And I went home, and in about in a few hours from that walk, and I think the release that I had to do to kind of get through it, I think new ideas came through. And that night, I think we were able to complete it and send it off. And I remember, I think very beautiful was how Valarie's line struck me, which is that it's, I don't measure my success as a person by what I produce, but by my faithfulness to the labor. And that sort of reminded me, okay, I know I'm struggling today, and I'm just going to sit inside this space. I'm going to fuel all this sort of dark emotion that's coming through, and I will allow it to pour into this and let it evolve and see what happens, And so, yes, it was deeply cathartic, and I'm so grateful. And Farah, really, thank you for your vision, for your, again, intention, for your heart, and for thinking of each of the different people to be part of this process with you, because really we've received so much, and I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that you exist, and that you made this happen for all of us, really.
Well, Annette, I'm thinking of your dream, and though I didn't have a literal one, I often say, sometimes I think a dream came true that I didn't even know I had. And I believe that dream started when we crossed paths, when you accepted my invitation to be on the podcast, when you said you were in to do this project, and now to have just such a group of powerful, dynamic, brilliant women come together in this way. I Can't wait, and I hope that it will all be in person sometime very soon. Valarie Kaur is a civil rights activist, lawyer, award-winning filmmaker, educator, author, and Sikh American voice. Valarie burst into American consciousness in the wake of the 2016 election when her Watch Night service address went viral with 40 million views worldwide. Her question, is this the darkness of the tomb or the darkness of the womb, reframed the political moment and became a mantra for people fighting for change. Valarie now leads the Revolutionary Love Project to reclaim love as a force for justice in America. In the last 20 years, as a lawyer, innovator, and award-winning filmmaker, Valarie has won policy change on multiple fronts: hate crimes, racial profiling, immigration detention, solitary confinement, internet freedom, and more. In 2020, Valarie's book, See No Stranger, a memoir and manifesto of revolutionary love, was released and expands on her blockbuster TED Talk. So grateful and so inspired by this amazing individual, Valarie Kaur.
I'm struggling for a moment here. I'm just sort of overcome.
Taking it all in, yeah.
I'm overcome with emotion because my mind flashed back to like the moment I first met you. You know, I was a senior in college and walked into Dadaji's class, not having no idea, no dance experience, nothing in my body, just was so moved by the description, didn't know what Kathak was. And he was already playing tabla as we sat down. And you were next to him and he asked you, and you know, it was Jamunake, it was Krishna Kalia, that's what you danced. But Farah, I had never seen someone inhabit, you know, the entire spectrum of human emotion in a single body like that. It was like, I'll never forget that moment. That was the beginning of, you know, and Kathak has been in my life since then, just like
2003. And Valarie, the beautiful thing, I only now can look back on those moments and I'm just blown away at how much we didn't know about you and this profound work that you were already doing, and your humility in all of it. And your ability, no, I say that because your ability to constantly be so open to receiving and being nourished and enlightened by others. It was, I now look back to almost 20 years and say, my God, that in and of itself was such a lesson. And yeah,
makes my heart ache.
Yeah, I mean, again, the exchange was reciprocal and we didn't even know it.
And the, you know, the stories and the thesis that I handed you all, that was the beginning of me writing See No Stranger. And the same stories in that thesis are in chapter 2. And now here you read the book decades later and make magic of it. I just, it's, oh, we could not have known the magic of staying in a relationship. It's like you can measure your life or your success based on outcomes, but it's not very useful because you may not live to see the fruits of your labors. Instead, measure your success by your faithfulness to the labor. Can you stay faithful to the labor? And I think about the labor of art, of movement, of justice, of relationship, and we have stayed faithful to the labor, Farah.
Yeah. Some of the things that are really coming to me having read the book, and, you know, watching your Watch Night speech, watching even the TED Talk, what I'm seeing over the rich work that you have done, it's not just that this book came out in 2020 and here it is, right? I mean, this is incorporating so much of your childhood, so much of the things that you've been exploring, doing, activating. Did you always have this feeling of, even when you did your TED Talk, like, I know this is going to be part of a book sometime? Like, how did all of this come together for you is what I'm so curious about.
I have been writing this book for 18 years. I kept a journal since I was 7 years old, and I would always, my shelf was just full of, and it was like journals of my life. But it wasn't until I was in college and in the aftermath of the horror of September 11th and Balbir Uncle's death, Balbir Singh Sodhi murdered, the first person murdered in a hate crime after 9/11. I had always thought I'd become an academic, but his murder turned me into an activist. And I spent all those months traveling around the country, capturing stories with my little camera of aunties and uncles, Sikh and Muslim Americans, and in the wake of so much violence. And this was before social media and before YouTube and before we had any channels to tell our own stories. So it was just this need, this burning desire, this responsibility I felt to take these stories and for the world to hear them. So I came back to campus in January of 2002 and signed up for my first book writing class.
Oh, wow.
And in that class, I was writing down, the story of Balbir Uncle's widow, the stories that I had witnessed on the road that eventually became my honors thesis out of college, which I handed to you.
Yes.
And then after graduation, I sent it off to agents and to publishers to see if anyone would help me turn this into a book. I felt like the stories that I had in my hands, like, I felt like I was a steward of them, and in a way a steward of our community's struggles and bloodshed and aspirations and yearning to belong in this country, to be seen. And so, oh gosh, I should have kept all the rejection letters, shouldn't I have? Like letter after letter. There's no audience for this. There's no voice for this. There's no, this is important work. And so, Farah, every year after that, I kept writing the stories. I know, because after that it was the Iraq War, and then it was Guantanamo, and then it was, wrestling with the, from the Obama era all the way to the Trump era. I just kept, living the stories and writing them, living them and writing them. And every few years I would come up with a new book proposal. So I have a list of book proposals on my computer from 2005, 2007, 2009, 2013, 2015. All these years. Wow. And all this time, never could find anyone who believed that these stories were worth telling. I had this fear that I was going to die with all the music still inside me. Like, and I felt so much pressure inside of me, like I had, like I was very pregnant, like I needed to get it out so I could be free of all the stories. And it was 2016. And when the last president took power and white nationalists claimed that moment as their great awakening, and hate violence was skyrocketing, and I had just become a new mother, and I would tuck Gubby into the crib at night and just this ache spreading through my chest, thinking, what was it all for? I became a lawyer and a filmmaker and an organizer. What was it all for? Every lawsuit, every film, every campaign, other than to make the nation safer for our babies. And here they are growing up in a country more dangerous for them than it was for us. So I had this existential crisis. And between the election of 2016 and the inauguration, I wrote book proposal, 2016 Revolutionary Love is the Call of Our Times. And I looked at all the stories, and I said, okay, what does it all add up to? We need more than sound government. We need more than sound policy. We need a shift in culture and consciousness. We need a revolution of the heart. And that was the proposal. And it landed on the desk of Chris Jackson at One World Random House. And perhaps it took all those years for Chris, a Black man who is a visionary, editor who has been, they credit him as almost single-handedly giving rise to the new Black literary movement in this country to push how we talk about race and justice in America. It was him who had the proposal in his hands and said, oh, revolutionary love is a cultural intervention that we need now. So Farah, he gave me, I just met with him this morning about our next book. But he gave me my, my golden ticket in a way. It's, I got a gift that very few women who are activists or mothers or artists are ever given. I was given time off. I could step back from the front lines, step out of the crisis response work. And I took my family to the rainforest in Central America. And the rainforest felt like a womb, It was so safe and warm and wet. And I read everything I had written since the age of 7. I went through all those book proposals. I took all my textbooks out and I was looking for patterns that I came to call these practices of revolutionary love. And my book was then born in that context of pulling out that deep buried wisdom, offering it.
So many things you're saying, Valarie. I think that I really want to call out that, just the persistence that one has to have. And what I love, though, about the way that you share so much in the book is that you haven't dismissed anything that may have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. That's all part of your story. It's all part of the message. So it's honoring that even though time and space is a real thing and we have to capture it for what it is, we also have to keep learning, especially when in present day, certain things keep repeating themselves, right? I mean, when you said, yes, you had the gift to sort of retreat and be with your babies, but it reminds me of your sort of that beautiful chart that you have about revolutionary love. It's about giving love to yourself.
Yes.
It's about giving love to others and to your opponent. And you were giving love to yourself, which was so much a part about giving love to others and really to the opponent at the same time. So there was no break in that. That was just part of the larger process.
I really appreciate it.
I believe it.
The deep answer is that if I hadn't had that chance to leave for the rainforest, and I don't know if I would have been able to last. I had just been pushing from 9/11 to present day. I hadn't really taken in the wisdom of the midwife. She doesn't say breathe once and push the rest of the way. She says breathe, my love, and then push and then breathe again. To sustain yourself in any long labor, to find longevity and resilience in any long labor, you have to be breathing between the pushing. And it was like it was like the first time I could take a deep breath. Finally, in that moment, and that deep breath, what did it generate, right? It generated the book coming out of me and my ability to come back to the country and I know how to breathe now. I carry the rainforest inside me. I will last now.
Absolutely. Because I love so much these metaphors you have about breathing and pushing in labor, and having been blessed with being able to birth a child as well. And I still remember some of the classes I took, which I was fortunate enough to be able to do a natural birth, and something that the woman who was offering some tips and guidance on how to be present in that process, be present in labor. And she said something that I believe holds true in so many ways. Her direction, her guidance was, when you feel that most intense of feelings when in labor, breathe through it. Don't resist. Don't hold your breath. Breathe through it. Be okay with feeling the pain, because that's what's going to get you to the other side. And so again, so much of your words resonate with me in hearing that woman's wise words as well.
And I love this, because what I want to do is I want to liberate that wisdom for all of us, for all of our various labors. Only a subset of mostly men have gone to war in human history. But when we say warrior on, soldier on, we know exactly what that means. You know, it's the courage to fight the good fight. So too, you know, a subset of women give birth in that particular way that we're describing. But all of us, you know, need wisdom to sustain our labors, the labor of making art, of making music and dance, the labor of raising a family, the labor of building a movement, the labor of rebirthing a country. How do we sustain ourselves in that labor when it becomes that painful, when the fire is that bright, when you don't know how to, when all you want to do is resist, and what you're describing, breathe through it. And then we never go to battle alone. We don't give birth alone. So who are your midwives in this moment? In the midst of the labors that you are in, who is helping you breathe? Who are you helping breathe? How are you breathing every day in between the pushing so that we last?
You may recall I even messaged you. I had to get my wisdom teeth pulled. And I was on the chair, and the funny part about messaging you about that was your response. You were like, that and going for like my annual pap smears, like those two things, forget it. I hate them. And I'm right here with you. Like, it is very invasive.
You know, actually, I finally like booked my annual check-in to the dentist for my teeth, because I was like, okay, if Farah can do it, she was listening to me, like she was listening to I can do it. I can, like, I'll just listen to something else.
And I think I cracked the code. I like literally had my earbuds in, and I was taken to another place because of your voice. And I happened to be on the section, which was so powerful for all the obvious reasons. But hearing you give this minute to minute almost of what happened in Oak Creek, Wisconsin. And of course, you weren't there, but I imagine that came through so many conversations, and to even be in a place where you could have those very trusted, vulnerable conversations with those individuals. And I had my AirPods in, and probably two people were in my mouth doing whatever they were doing. And the tears, I know, and the tears were just falling to the point where they stopped. They're like, "Are you okay?" Thinking that they were putting me through all this pain. And I was like, no, it's not you. Like, it's not you. That's like all I could muster up. But Valarie, wow. I mean, and obviously that was one instance of, you know, so many situations that you have documented, been present to help others grieve, to grieve yourself. What is that? Where do you find the strength?
I think I learned how to make myself empty early on. I don't think it's as much strength as emptying out into presence. You know, I was only 20 when I was sitting in homes and gurdwaras, and you know, sometimes when the blood was still fresh on the ground in the wake of September 11th with aunties and uncles. There were no investigative journalists, there were no media cameras. It was just this 20-year-old kid who, and I think that's where the responsibility came, you know, and seized me. It's like no one else is hearing these stories. And so I would go and I would just listen. So early on, and I thought my job was to like, I'm capturing this, you know, to make it into something. And we eventually did. But I think the real work was sitting with and grieving with people who were otherwise grieving alone. And every time the sensations would rise in me, I would just have to get, you know, notice the ground beneath my feet, take a deep breath, notice the sensations. They get quiet when you notice them, and then make sure that my pain or my grief is not so, you know, intense that it's blinding me or preventing me from continuing to listen to theirs, to be attuned to theirs, to ask the next question, to keep wondering, to listen to the silences and the sighs and the murmurs and by the end, you know, when they tell the story, it was really just a matter of grieving with them. Something had been accomplished. You know, they were seen, they were heard, their story mattered, their life mattered. And it was part of not only their survival, but eventually their healing, their resilience. And that's how I learned early on that grieving with people, you don't have to know people in order to grieve with them. You grieve with them in order to know them. And there's no fixing it. Our culture gives us this notion that you fix it, that you say the right words. There are no right words when it's this unspeakable. No, you sit and you witness and you believe, you understand that your presence alone is the balm to the wound. And grieving with others like that and learning how to love them like that, it deepened my own capacity to be able to weather losses in my own life, to be present to my own pain. And now, and Oak Creek, that's what it was. I was there for days and weeks and months, really just, I could write the story in such detail because it was just presence and listening. And I saw in Oak Creek more than any other place, you know, in the wake of that kind of mass shooting, when the community came to grieve with them, when the thousands of people came in the memorial, when I wasn't the only, there were others there, you know, that is how the community had enough resilience to bind the wounds, to rebuild the Gurdwara with their own hands, to fight for hate crimes legislation, you know, even all these years later, to stay in the labor. It was that kind of those revolutionary acts of love in the wake of that kind of trauma. So I think that there's nothing special that I have that I think all of us are capable. All of us have the capacity to sit and be present to pain and other people's loss. And the idea is, you know, when you see that pain coming, you'll want to close the borders of your heart. You'll want to raise the flag, you know, because somehow it's going to hurt you too. But no, my love, your heart is a muscle. You know, the more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And the easier it is now for me just to empty out, to be present, to be here with you now, and to know that we together are strong enough to navigate the waves of emotion that come and flow, and we breathe through it into something on the other side that is new.
Thank you. Well, I know I don't need to say yet again, but obviously just such brilliance, wisdom, inspiration from both Annette and Valarie. And now really the only thing that would make all of this even more powerful would be bringing all of us together in one conversation. But before we do that, I do want to just let you know that this episode will continue to be available through the link that you used to join us today. Again, so much being shared through words and again, through what we're going to continue to share as the episode continues, that if you're like me, you will like to watch it over and over again. So we encourage you to do so. We definitely want you to share it with others. At Noorani Dance, we do believe in the valuing of the arts and artists. So we do request a donation using a pay what you can model, hoping it is accessible to any and all. And this kind of support really does ensure that we can continue to provide programs such as the Heartistry Video Series and work with such fabulous artists. So again, please do feel free, watch this over and over, as I know I will be. And now, the coming together of all of these heARTivists. You've seen a little bit, you've heard from them, but imagine what it's like when we're all in conversation together. And for this, we invited Bhumi Patel to moderate this conversation. And you'll see all of us. Unfortunately, one of our artists, Athena Nair, was not able to join us. However, you will see Valarie, Annette, Alicia, Aysha, Athena will be seen in the work that is shown following the conversation, and Brinda and Nadhi. And following this group conversation, we will be sharing the premiere of our new collaborative work titled Transition. Transition is meant to amplify the powerful messaging of Valarie's words through an acknowledgement that the world, and really all of humanity, is in transition, and that we truly need a shift in consciousness and culture through revolutionary love. Again, the video will be available on our YouTube channel very soon, even on its own. And we would so appreciate you sharing not just the artistry of it, but what that will do is be a vehicle also to the profound messaging through the art, through the words, the music, the dance. At the very end of the episode, we will stay on for a few extra minutes in the chat to see your responses to the premiere video and any other thoughts that you might like to share. So again, please stay on with us if you like. But without further ado, we share with you the group conversation followed by the premiere of Transition. And we thank you so very much for your support of Noorani Dance, of the Heartistry Video Series, and for joining us for these very special episodes, Social Change Through Heartivism.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bhumi Patel, and my pronouns are she, they. I am here on the Zoom call on the unceded land of the Chochenyo Ohlone people, colonially known as Oakland, California. I am a South Asian woman with long, dark hair, brown eyes that I have lined with black eyeliner. I am wearing a black short-sleeved top that has small pink flowers on it. I am in a room that has sunlight coming in through the window. It's very bright and warm. I am sitting on a beige armchair. And I am so glad that all of you are here with us today. I'd love to start with brief introductions so that the audience can get to know all of you. In addition to sharing your name, pronouns, location, and a visual description, I would ask you to share a little bit of your background. And I wanted to pose the question, what does heARTivism mean to you?
My name is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh. I am the founder and director of Noorani Dance and a Kathak artist. My pronouns are she, her, and I am currently located in on the native land of the Ramayatush people. I am sitting in a my home-based dance studio, a mirror to my right, some instruments in the background. My feet are very comfortably and happily resting on the dance floor. I won't say a whole lot because in this episode, you've already heard so much from me about the intention of this episode. And if anything, I want to just state infinite gratitude to everybody on this screen with me right now and the many who helped to bring us together generations before us and even in our more recent history. And I am just so deeply blessed to be in the presence and in relationship and in collaboration with all of you. I will pass it to Aysha.
Thank you, Farah. Hello, everyone. My name is Aysha Upchurch. I use she, her pronouns. I am joining you all live virtually and really from the land of the Massachusetts people in Boston, Massachusetts. I am seated at a desk in my home office, wearing a gray t-shirt, and the chair that I'm sitting in is very worn out from so much sitting over the past year. So I swivel and I fidget a bit because my chair is literally uncomfortable, but I am so excited to be here with you all today. I identify as a Black African diasporic woman who was born and raised on the north side of St. Louis and is now in Massachusetts. I do many things, but most importantly, I am the fourth born of Marsha and William. I am all of my siblings, my cousins, my aunties. I am everything that came before me that celebrates the joy of being a Black person, of being a free person. And my work as an artist, as a dancer, as a choreographer, really is to root us. also using text, that brings us back into conversation and liberation as being essential and striving that we not lose sight of joy. Getting at the root of joy and liberation together. For me, I think that's what heARTivism is, because my heart can't be fueled by my anger and my frustration. It has to be a motor run by love that is greater than all the oppression that surrounds us. So that's who I am. I will pass it to Nadhi.
Thank you, Aysha. My name is Nadhi Thekkek. I go by she, her, or they, them pronouns. I am located on the land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people in the Bay Area. I wear a lot of hats, mom of 3, Bharatanatyam dancer. I'm the director and founder of Nava Dance Theater, a contemporary Bharatanatyam dance company based in the Bay Area. And next year is our 10th anniversary, I'm realizing. I like to think of myself, and I think this is what I'm accepting about myself, is that I am a storyteller and movement is my language. And that's telling the stories of our ancestors, especially in a way that isn't seen or heard very often. The marginalized stories of our people as immigrants, and the stories of women specifically that we don't get to hear. And what does that mean for my community and for my children? So that's where I am right now. And so hopefully my storytelling will be able to connect all these dots. heARTivism, I think storytelling is very much a part of that, because it's making visible stories that we don't hear. And I think that's so important for our community to know, like, where we came from, and that they have to know that it's not always written down for them to take in, that it's a part of our bodies. And I think for me, the best way to share it with them is through movement, through collecting these stories and translating it for them. I'm going to pass it to Annette.
Thank you, Nadhi. Hello, everyone. I'm Annette Philip. I'm a musician, storyteller, educator, and arts entrepreneur, originally from Kerala, India. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm currently located on the East Coast between Boston and New York. I am today in my music room, which has a lot of instruments behind me, and my favorite warm light from my favorite lampshade is right in front of me and giving me much joy. And I love light that is very warm. Today, for some reason, my hair is very extra curly, and so I am going with it. In terms of what I am doing currently in my life, in terms of my professional career, I'm the founder director of the Berklee Indian Ensemble at Berklee College of Music in Boston. And I'm also part of a vocal ensemble called Women of the World, where we try to sing in as many vocal traditions from around the world. Currently, we sing in 37 languages, and our endeavor is to try to learn as many languages as possible and tell stories from those cultures, specifically focusing on forgotten languages or languages that are soon going to be extinct. And how I got into this was really because as a child, I understood very quickly that I was in love with sound. And perhaps even more importantly, I was in love with the energy that filled me when I sang or created with others. And that was really the fire behind everything that I began to do. And even as a young child, I started to create spaces where people could sing together, dance together, make art together, create and imagine together. And so my purpose, I've always felt, is to connect people and build community through music and help people to express themselves. And through this, to bring life to untold stories and ultimately to bring more art into the world. And I really, really believe the world needs more art. And so as an educator, as an entrepreneur, I use every avenue to advocate for families, for parents specifically, especially back home in India, to reconsider their mindset about a life and a professional career in the performing arts. And I think that heARTivism is about really spending time, I think, finding what it is that moves you and how you may use whatever gift you have to connect people and to do something that moves you, and to do something with kindness in whatever field it is that you're in. I pass it on to Valarie.
Thank you, Annette. I am so grateful to be in this circle of artists. My name is Valarie Kaur. I use she, her pronouns. I'm speaking to you from Los Angeles, the land of the Tongva people. I'm sitting in a room where I've done many live virtual events and none quite like this. It really feels like we're turning the virtual space into a sacred space and leading with heart. I'm sitting with a warm, soft light on the right side of me. I'm wearing a dress that is green because it brings me so much joy. And behind me is the book that I wrote, in a poster of the book jacket that my husband had framed. I said, you know, it's bigger than any single picture of our children in our house. And he's like, yeah, I know. My book, See No Stranger, was a labor of love, not just for me, but for my whole family. And it's been out for almost a year. So the words you're going to be hearing tonight are taken from the book itself. I have been a civil rights activist, lawyer, filmmaker, organizer for 20 years. I became an activist after Balbir Singh Sodhi, Balbir uncle, was the first to be murdered in a hate crime after 9/11. And all the years of laboring for civil and human rights for my people, for our communities in this country, I came to understand that we need more than just policy. We need a shift in culture and consciousness. And I founded the Revolutionary Love Project, declaring that revolutionary love, which is a form of heartivism, is the call of our times. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm going to pass it on to Brinda.
I never thought I'd be introduced by Valarie Kaur. I'm so excited. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of everybody here. My name is Brinda Guha. My pronouns are she and her. And I'm calling in from the stolen territory of the Lenape Munsee land and people, and honor our ancestors while sharing space with many other melanated bodies who carry its own legacies here today. I have dark hair pulled back with a part in the middle, a black sweatshirt that says I am a New Yorker for dance, from my employers at Dance NYC. I have very large cymbal-shaped earrings with a warm sunset-colored light that's coming from the front and reflecting on my skin, and a blurred darker gray background that feels like the small intensified study and workspace that this is in our home. I identify as a non-disabled, cisgendered, caste privileged, queer, South Asian American choreographer, performer, educator, organizer, administrator, thought partner, life partner, stepmother, and human being. And I have no access needs today. My Bengali community, language, and food gave me my pillars and my rootedness. My privilege of using the full capacity of my body gave me the physicality that was necessary to cope at certain points in my life. And my relationality with people and my ability to love people gives me the courage to challenge all of us to do a little bit better. A bit of my background: I'm the organizer of Wise Fruit NYC, which is a live arts showcase dedicated to the feminine divine. I'm the director of Kalamandir Dance Company, a contemporary Indian dance ensemble based in the values of transparency and womanhood. I'm a teacher at Kalamandir of New Jersey Dance School, originally founded by my mother and guru, Brinda Guha. And I'm a performer with Souls of Duende, a multicultural percussive trio rooted in the rhythms of tap, flamenco, and Kathak. And I work in the programs department at Dance NYC, which is based on the values of justice, equity, and inclusion as a service organization for dance organizations in New York City. And heARTivism for me is relationality, relationships with people. I do think that that's the basis of activism. Change happens in transformational pockets that centers our innate humanity as the access point for necessary change. It means understanding that the needs of the most marginalized enriches the potential and realities for all of us. It invests in connection and divests from negative judgment. It allows for our fullness to be. It's where our deepest art meets activism and actionable momentum towards human and civil rights. So I do think really big change happens with really intentional connections being made with people. And that's why I think heARTivism means relationships first. And I'm really happy to be here. This is a really cool group of people. I pass it over to Alicia.
Hello, I'm Alicia Nascimento Castro, and I'm coming here from the native land of Phoenix, Arizona. My pronouns are she and her. I am a dance educator, a dancer, a choreographer, wife, mother, and I am half colonized, half colonizer. So I'm mixed race with Afro-Brazilian and American. My work is virtuostic. It's about ancestral knowledge. It's justice. It's everything that makes me feel happy. heARTivism for me is being here in this community, listening to you ladies, and telling our stories, making sure that people know that you don't have to have formal education to have ancestral knowledge. All of these things are in your body. Dance is dance, and all of it is beautiful. And I'm just thankful to be with you all today.
And I'll just pass it back to Farah for a moment to introduce one of the artists who unfortunately can't be with us tonight.
Thank you, Pumi. Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge Athena Nair, who is also one of our collaborators on this project, who unfortunately couldn't be with us physically, but of course we saw a little bit about her earlier on in the episode, and we will see her in the collaborative project that we will be sharing shortly. So thank you.
I'm going to dive right in and start us off with the question, how does interconnectedness and revolutionary love show up in your own creative practice and in your life beyond your creative practice? I'll start by passing this question to Aysha, Farah, and Nabi.
I like to say that I don't have a job. I don't worry about jobs anymore. Not because I'm a trust fund baby balling out of control over here, but more so because I understand the divine work that I am called to do, enjoy doing, and I do it in different sandboxes. So I have a practice as an educator at a very elite academic institution. And I think revolutionary love is that I understand how to be in that space and protect the sanctity of who I am and not offer that to the institution for slaughter, because it's a slippery slope. And for me to show up for my students and say, even though we are here in this container of academia, I'm going to love you. I'm going to design my syllabus with love, with respect that you need to eat, sleep, and drink healthily every day, and not fall on the sword here to be academically hazed into performing knowledge. As someone said, I think it was Alicia in her intro, that you don't need the stamp of academia to have ancestral knowledge, which I think is super liberatory. So I think revolutionary love in my practice as an educator in that particular sandbox is to always guard, know, and honor who I am, where I come from, the immediate shoulders that I stand on, which is literally my mama, my daddy, and what they did, literally what they did and sacrificed. And to know that that's one sandbox where I'm working inside, I don't have to surrender who I am to become another cog in the wheel. And in my practice as an artist, as I am now, excitedly 41, 4 decades here on this here planet. If we can keep protecting her, I can be here for 4 more of those decades plus. You know, me at 25 as an artist who didn't feel comfortable calling myself an artist, I didn't know how to honor who I am and what my process is and how not to fall into the line of having to do that in a way that other people do it. And so I think revolutionary love shows up for someone who does a lot of solo work now, is to love this body as it is, to love all of the movement knowledge, the movement tongues that are in this body, and to trust that the divine is working through me to give a message. And whether that is as pristine, polished, my leg does not go anywhere near 90 or 180. I'm here for the 60 degree, hello. But to know that I can't say that I honor this craft and this tongue that I have as dance, and I'm still holding it up to have to look like this standard, because then I'm actually not, I don't have a decolonized practice. I have to love on purpose and with a lot of intention who I am, how I am in this body, in this physical body that I have, which is non-disabled, which has a big butt, got some hips, you know, all of those things that get over-sexualized, unnecessarily sexualized, how to love that for me and tell the story for my own liberation and those who I'm called to. And I'll finish by saying, you know, I think a lot about the words of the activist Lila Watson that, you know, our liberation is tied up together. So interconnectedness is essential. So I can't strive for my liberation if I'm being false to who I am, because I'm going to teach you how to treat me falsely, and I'm going to learn how to treat other people falsely. And so I think really centering in on truth, radical truth as a practice of self-love allows me to feel more connection with you divine humans who I never met in the flesh, but feel like I know because you've shown that as I've gotten to know you. So I think for me, it shows up in my practice as an educator and as an artist with radical self-truth and honoring who I am.
I mean, those words were, I'm just sitting with those words right now. So much of what you said is really resonating. And I mean, I think it shows up interconnectedness and revolutionary love. I mean, how I interact with each of my collaborators and each of, because it's a company, you know, and I love that. The reason I make work with the company is I do love collaborating, and I love working with other dancers, musicians, artists, lighting people. I mean, I love the bringing together of brilliant people, putting them in a room and having things grow. And it's and I love when people come together and what they create is greater than the sum of its parts. I mean, that's what gets me up in the morning. And that interconnectedness, like that word, I mean, that's what motivates me to do this job, you know. And I love being in a room with a cello player and a flute player and a modern dancer and a Bharatanatyam dancer and a Kathak dancer, and like this is a story of us. Like what comes out of this moment? That's the truth. That's what fires me up, you know. And that's what I want our audiences, our communities to see, that truth that comes from being in the same room together. And we did a project recently where I kind of likened it to a few people standing at a bus stop, and you won't talk to each other and you're just waiting for the bus or whatever it is. And but actually, if you just sit and talk, there's so many points that you can connect, and you have all these common feelings and life stories and things that you learn from each other. And that's what I feel like my practice is about. It's about bringing people together and really finding those truth points that definitely exist, you know, and just saying them out loud for all of us to hear. And from that, I've realized like the love grows. Speaking in draft, but I think that feels revolutionary to me, like getting in a room with a group of almost strangers, but knowing that that love can grow from that, like through this practice and through our art. I mean, it's like literally why I'm here right now. So, and this, I mean, just this room itself sort of proves this point. I feel like every time we all get together and talk, I feel that sort of love and energy grow. And I just hope that, and I hope you all realize what you bring to me and to the people that are listening. I mean, that's what I feel in this moment right now. And that's what I think my practice is about.
Beautiful, Nadhi. Thank you. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to echo so much of what was already said. So without being redundant, I think just the irony of when we think of the word revolutionary, it seems like it needs to be something new, but it's in some ways going back home. And I think about, just even as Nadhi was speaking, in Valarie's words, like what's that first phase, wonder. It's about the curiosity of somebody who may not be initially part of that home base. And again, then as Nadhi said, this is to me that interconnectedness. So it was about reaching out to some of you I knew but hadn't seen or talked to in a long time, and so many of you that we newly got to work together in this way. So to me, that would be my reflection on this question.
And our next question, I'm going to toss to Annette, Alicia, Brinda, and Valarie. So quite a few of you. And again, no pressure to answer every question. But in the darkest moments, the ones during which you want to give up, what keeps you in pursuit of social change through heARTivism? Where does that come from for you?
I'll go. Since I had a very dark last year, I feel like what keeps us going is this desire to see the change that needs to happen, the desire for a world actually leading from love, a desire to have our stories heard, a desire to take up space, a desire to be in all spaces comfortably and authentically. So I feel that's where all of my work keeps coming from, is from that like place of truth and from a place of love and a place of storytelling and being in the space, taking up space, and knowing that our ancestors are coming alive through us and through our stories. And so they're important and they need to be heard. And if they're not heard, how can we get them heard? What do we have to do? Where do we have to tear down? What do we have to build up? How do we get into these spaces and bring people with us? So I'm like constantly trying to figure out, it doesn't matter where we go, like we're always just trying to be authentically in our skin in all spaces, and we know that that is not true, so we're trying to make it so that it is.
I would love to hear, Valarie, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I'm struck by how many of us have named ancestors. And I keep thinking, if there is such a thing as ancestral trauma, then there must be such a thing as ancestral wisdom, ancestral resilience. And in my darkest moments, it's Papaji, it's my grandfather, it's his prayer, that his shabad that comes to my lips. The hot winds cannot touch you. You are shielded by love. And when I recite this shabad, he infused it with his magic, his power, because it was the shabad he recited when he was, lying on the ground in the fields of Egypt and Libya under the German air raids during World War II, or during the mass violence and migration during the partition, or when he was hiding on the rooftops during the pogroms against Sikhs in 1984. I keep thinking, if he could be that brave in the face of life and in the face of death, might I be too? When I was a little girl, anytime I wanted to give up, I was a little girl growing up on the farmlands in California, and two long braids who liked to ride tractors, right? But my grandfather would come home with tears after the last racial slur, and he would say, "My dear, don't abandon your post." My grandfather saw me as a warrior, as a Sant Sipai, as a sage warrior. And so, in those dark moments, I just hear Papaji's voice. I could feel his chocolate brown sweater. I can smell it, smelling of sweetness and must, and I can hear his prayer, and I can feel that love inside of me. And that's just enough, Farah. It's just enough for me to take the next breath and return to the battlefield of the world. And I keep thinking that, I will be someone's ancestor one day. They will summon me. Can I live my life in such a way that they won't inherit the trauma, but they will inherit the bravery, perhaps even the joy. That's what keeps me going. To labor for a more just and beautiful world with love and with joy has become the meaning of life for me.
I can go next, Valarie. That was so beautiful. Just everyone on this group. I mean, I'm just sitting here and absorbing, and also remembering conversations with my mother. I'm an only child, and my mother and I seem to have parallel moments of realizations, even when we are, continents, oceans apart. And I found that the thing that is resonating with both of us that we didn't talk about, but when we finally shared, we realized that we were in the same cycle once again, was forgiveness. And my mother has been practicing a chant which is called Ho'oponopono, and it's from the Hawaiian culture. And basically, there are 4 phrases: I love you, please forgive me, I'm sorry, and thank you. And it's supposed to be a chant that you say to first and foremost heal the part of you that has created anything outside of you in your environment that is oppressing you, but to heal the part of you because in some way you are responsible. Whether, again, if you think of an ancestral past or what is to come in the future, there is something within you that has created this or that has allowed this situation to continue to exist. And the practice of Ho'oponopono, the way that my mother is using it, is first to look inward and to see what parts of herself she needs to forgive and what parts of herself she needs to accept, and who and in how, or who and in what ways she needs to apologize. And she called me the other day and she said, I know I did my best, and I know that I made so many mistakes in how I raised you. And I'm so sorry for that. And of course, I burst into tears because I've always felt that my mother is really the epitome of anything that I could have wished for growing up. And for us, both of us right now, even in terms of, how I see myself, how I see my body, in the places, even in my relationships, where I'm wondering if it's okay to take this much space. Acceptance and forgiveness has been the one thing that has allowed me to sit with it when it's really dark, when it's really heavy, when it's really just miserable, the days that you don't want to get out of bed and you just feel pathetic. The forgiveness allows me to get up again and take one more step.
I can jump in here. Annette, thank you so much. That consideration of forgiveness, I think, is the basis of a lot of healing for a lot of us. I see a little baby here. Hi, baby. Hi. These are your aunties. I'm thinking deeply about the basis of colonization. I think about what that really was, right? We think about colonization as simply, annexing land and the erasure of people, right? So we think about, like the erasure of memory and the erasure of identity, and then the erasure of relationships. And then you've now broken the cycle of holding on to the things that are supposed to give you power later when you need it, right? So it's just so insidious to me. And in my darkest moments, I think about, this is erasure. This is erasure that's happening, right? And that gives me a lot of anxiety. That gives me a lot of fear, because I'm just like, you're breaking this. Anything good in this world takes time. You know, it's like I was having a conversation with a North African dance artist named Esra Warda on IG Live, and she was telling me that, like in North Algerian dances and like in so many of our South Asian dances and so many of our melanated bodies and ancestral knowledge, like we said, there's this idea of the four pillars of art, right? There's the musical instrumentation, there's the movement, there's the song making and the poetry, and then there's the wisdom, right? And so it's like the goal in art is to embody the four pillars, right? Is to try to kind of live in the space of those four pillars. And so you spend time, you spend years with the musical instruments, you spend years with the poetry, you know? And so in my darkest hours, I just think, you know, this is an erasure, this is an attempt at erasure of our process. Our process takes time. And so the only way, you know, my therapist always says, the only way to like really change the course is to inject yourself with more of that inspiration, to ruminate on more of those things that keep you going, right? And that's how I tend to combat erasure in my anxious mind, is to inject more things that cannot be erased, right? Which is our connection to each other, our commitment to compassion.
Thank you. And in the spirit of good things taking time, I just want to acknowledge that this conversation is like a short amount of time that only really scratches the surface of everything that we're doing. And I know we are all on limited time together. And so I want to pose one question for Valarie, and then pose one question for all of you to maybe offer a short answer to. Valarie, the question I have for you is, what are you feeling, or what does it feel like to see the words that you write and the words that you speak embodied in this way? Like, the voice is an embodiment, but movement is a different type of embodiment. I'm just curious about how that has landed, how it sits in your body.
There is no greater gift, I think, for an artist than to see her art inspire art. And so I have been, you know, speechless throughout this process with you, Farah, and with all of you as dancers, and with you, Annette. The words that I put on the page came from, you know, the depth of me. But when I first heard Annette put them to music, it was like she had taken it and worked her alchemy and then given it back to me anew. The music itself was a kind of embodiment so that I could feel the words, not just here, but here and here all the way through. And the glimpses I have seen in each of you as dancers, how you just immersed yourself in those words, took them and digested them, had them reverberate inside of you and pull you into moving through the world. I mean, isn't that the ultimate goal of putting out this call of love? That it wouldn't be an idea that people held, but it would be a way of moving through the world, an orientation to life, a way of being, a way of seeing, a way of showing up to ourselves and to all others and to the labor before us. And so to see you embody the words in dance, to bring them alive in dance with your entire being, body, flesh, breath, it has been so profound for me. And it's almost like a crystallization of what I hope this reclaiming of love, of revolutionary love might feel like for all of us. So just deep and profound gratitude.
Thank you so much, Valarie. The last question I'm going to pose for everyone is, what is your one ask for those watching this, perhaps in real time, or those who will watch it in the future? What is your one ask to go out into the world and do?
I think for me, one of the phrases from Valarie, from what you said, is for us to remember the gifts that we have. And I think the ask for me to anyone listening or watching or absorbing this is to remember that you have a gift and you have a voice, and it has been given to you for a reason. You are alive and here, present on the planet in this space and time for a reason, and there is a purpose. And please live in that, and really, really honor that in whichever way you can.
My ask is that everybody drink water. And everybody, that's right. That's what I was saying. You want that skin to glow? Let's all take a drink of water. I consider the basics. I consider sleep. I consider water. I consider being nice to the people who live in your house. I consider, being nice to yourself when you're being mean to yourself. I do think a lot of change and a lot of things that we need and that we ask for from the world are it's not that it comes from us, it's that the process begins with us, right? It's like how we show up to the ask from others, so if we're showing up half depleted, I don't know how much we can really accept if we get that help, right? And so I think I learned that this year. I think I learned that I had to stay hydrated. I had to do my skincare. I had to stretch. Like, I really learned I had to do some really basic things in order to connect to people in a meaningful way.
I think my ask is for like real connection, to just, I feel like after this pandemic and everything that has gone down, to just be taking away from virtual spaces and like connect to yourself, connect to the people around you, have like a real hug. That's what I would say. Yeah, be in your body and allow someone to touch your body. I'm Brazilian. That's probably not all cultures, but we like being up in people's spaces. So yeah, whatever that means, like connecting.
I'll connect with my sister Alicia here, because I think it is. I will take that hug. Yes, and also just back to like it is. I think it's very simple. The ask is always simple, and so my greatest wish is for us to remember how powerful the literal simple thing is. Tell the truth to yourself. Be open to learn more truth about yourself. That will probably help you see more truth in others. I read the 4 agreements, and I'm in some coaching, and this really revolutionary, it's so simple, but it's been so huge, right? Is that there's a script, because there's an agreement, there's a pact that was made that got all of us sleep. And so instead of rushing to perform wokeness and downness and solidariness, to actually, in the simple moments, the honest moments when no one's looking, my ask is for folks to see truth and to be gracious with yourself as you find truth, so that we don't get caught up in performing, striving, when we're actually just upholding that terrible script and agreement that was there. So it's really simple. Drink some water, hug your friend, brush your teeth, tell the truth.
I think for me, it's my ask is allow yourself to be joyful, because all this work that we're doing and what we're fighting for, if there isn't joy, like if you're not allowing yourself to find that, it's gonna be sad. No, it's not good. Oh yay, yes, choose joy, and whatever that means. I mean, it could be a hobby. You don't have to be great at it. Just want to stress that. Get a hobby that you're not good at that just brings you joy. You don't have to be the top painter, dancer, music maker. You could just play an instrument and you could just like it. And I think everyone needs that thing that they just like doing. That's my ask. Find joy, hopefully through something that just brings you joy and doesn't pressure you to be the best at it.
Well, this one's name is Ananda, which means joy. And she's been listening to your words. And hi. Do you want to show them? Your words have inspired art in her. Do you want to show?
Beautiful.
That gives me so much joy.
Thank you for sharing your art with us. I feel so honored.
And I would just add to that, that through that deep desire that we all hopefully feel to find our own sense of Ananda, of joy, to not be afraid to be afraid. Because sometimes it is those moments of darkness that actually is going to allow us to find that joy. And it's that those challenges, that fear, it's hard, but go for the joy, stay in community, focus on the love, focus on the wonder, be curious. That's my ask.
Thank you all so much. I think these are beautiful asks to send out into the world to create the world that we want to see. Thank you all for being part of this process. And thank you to the Noorani Dance community and to Farah for holding this container through Noorani Dance, and to all of you for bringing your artistry and your gifts and your wisdom for all of us to witness and be present for.
And I think at this time, if you all agree, I would love to share with our viewers tonight this wonderful coming together of sisterhood, of so much by sharing this collaborative project. So without further ado, let's show them this version of it. And as we say, inshallah, who knows? Let's put it out in the universe. Maybe someday we'll figure out a way to do it together live for each other and for whoever else will participate in it with us. But thank you, Bhumi. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Ananda.
The world is in transition. We have been witnessing the rise of far-right ethnic supremacist movements in the United States, across Europe, and around the globe, propping up demagogues, mainstreaming nativism, undermining democracy, politicizing the very notion of truth, and failing to safeguard the most vulnerable among us. The United States is in the midst of an unprecedented demographic transition. Within 25 years, the number of people of color will exceed the number of white people for the first time since colonization. And we are at a crossroads. Will we descend into a kind of civil war? A power struggle with those who want to return America to a past where only a certain class of white people hold political, cultural, and economic dominion? Or will we begin to birth a nation that has never been? A multiracial, multi-faith, multicultural democracy where we strive to protect the dignity of every person. With the climate crisis, the stakes are existential. The same supremacist ideologies that justified colonialism, the conquest, rape, massacre, and enslavement of Black and brown people around the globe, those same ideologies built industries that accumulate wealth by pillaging the earth, poisoning the waters, and darkening the skies. Global temperatures climb, seas rise, storms intensify, fires rage. Humanity itself is in transition. Are we on the brink of mass suffering and extinction? Or will we marshal the vision, skill, and solidarity to deliver a sustainable future? Is this the darkness of the tomb or of the womb? Some days are so deadly, I can taste the ash in my mouth. Other days, I see glimpses of the nation, the world that is wanting to be born. A society awakened to the truth of our interdependence. We need a shift in consciousness and culture, a revolution of the heart, a new way of being and seeing that leaves no one outside our circle of care, a love without limit, revolutionary love. Revolutionary love is the call of our times. Transition is an imperfect metaphor. There is no one point when a new society is born. We always find ourselves in the middle of a cycle. What matters is the choice to show up to the labor in front of you with the specific gifts you have been given to play your particular role. When we labor in love, we not only make future victories possible, we also begin to transform the world within us and around us, here and now. My darkest moments, when I want to give up, I remember the darkness of the womb and turn to the practices of revolutionary love. I measure my success as a person not by what I produce, but by my faithfulness to this labor. I want to last. I want you to last. I want to grow old. I want to grow old with you. I believe revolutionary love is our best chance as individuals and societies to stay in the fire long enough to deliver the world longing to be.
Tin, tin, taki, tin, tak, tin tin takita tin tak tin tin takita tin tak tin tin ta tak tin tin takita tin tak tin tin takita tin tak tin tin takita tin tak tin tin ta tak tin tin takita tin tak tin tin takita tin tak tin tin takita tin
Sa